Hello, this is Jeremy playing Oxygen Not Included. Just putting the last touches on the inverted world system over here. I'm going to put an OR gate in front of this steam turbine. Tell it to either operate when things are too hot or when a battery indicates that power is needed. Let's say 90% lower, it will start to operate until it gets back up to 100. So I already have a line for that. I'm just connecting that with a LED automated wire into that. And the other one goes over here. It's also an OR gate. It pretty much does the same thing. It's just a different heat source. This one is from hot magma, where the other one comes from the Equituner. Brine line is actually not constructed correctly. I have the brine line going into the Equituner before it goes into the liquid reservoir. I actually want it the opposite in this case. So in most cases, this is how I want it. That's why I kind of just, without thinking about it, did this. But I'm going to destruct this zone and reconstruct it such that the brine or the Equituner is visited on the way out of this line. And the idea there is I can detect the temperature that's safe for brine to cool down and actually get it as cold as possible. Because I want to get negative temperatures. I don't want to maintain 20 so degrees. I actually want to get to as cold, absolutely as cold as possible. So I'll probably make that -4. If I've got to -4 temperature coming out of that liquid reservoir of brine can go down to -20. Then I am saying, yeah, it's safe to go through the liquid tuner, and I can get close to, in some cases, to -20. Maybe not quite -20, but let's say somewhere between -15 and -20 is where it will be, and that'll be cold enough to cool off ice or water to form ice, create ice tiles themselves, not actual pieces of ice, so that I can grow some sleet wheat in this space. So not difficult to do. I just have to reconstruct it and put in the liquid bridges such that if it's warm enough, again above -4 degrees, the brine will go into the Equituner before going out into the whole system. Right now the system is just visiting the two steam turbines, but it will eventually make its way in and out of the base itself that has some different pockets of water set up for it. So here I'm now in my home world. I'm just putting the last touches on clearing out spots for rockets. I ultimately want to have 4 Radbolt engines and have those be powered by the nuclear power plant, the Radbolts. They're coming from that, but I need to get rid of some of this ladder that's going to exist where rockets are. Speaking of the rockets, this is the inside of one of the Radbolt engines that I'm constructing. It's currently in a vacuum. They're building all the wiring, or not wiring rather, but the piping in between where the food's going to be stored. So the next thing I want to do, and actually wherever possible, I'm going to make this out of gold to increase decoration value. I'm going to put in some of that naphthalene material here to keep a vacuum on the right side where food storage is going to be, so I can store as much food as I can get in a storage bin or a ration box. So I had the appropriate temperature checking occurring, but one thing that I did not do, you can see it was getting confused. Anytime you have an output or you want to skip by the liquid shutoff, you want to put it through a bridge. You force it to go in the direction of down. It was getting confused, I think. And what was happening is brine that was too cold was already too cold, was going through the Equituner in such a point that it was becoming solid inside the pipe, hence breaking the pipe and causing issues. To fix this, not too difficult because this hasn't turned to steam yet. I can actually just destroy this tile heat. It is going to drain some of the water that's sitting on the top, so I may need to refill that. But I can just build a ladder going down. Oh, temperature above. So that was a safe temperature. Let's put it above 20 for now, and eventually I'll take that down to -4. If its temperature's above -4, but I'll wait till the actual line is going through the base where I wanted to create some ice before it actually gets to that point. But anyway, there is some ladders. I might as well just leave the ladders there for the future. Hopefully I'll never have to do this again, but the idea is just to give my dupes access to be able to fix that one pipe, and then we'll be able to move on. Concentrating once again on the inside of the Radbolt engines. Just had one of the droops drop off some liquid here. That's going to be the separator between the food storage area and the rest of the base. So that food storage area I want to maintain in a vacuum. So I'm going to put some mesh tiles there so that the food can sit on top of that, and that'll be a vacuum underneath it and to all sides of it, such that the food will never be cool, will never warm up. And the only thing I need to do is make sure that the only food that ever gets loaded in there is already frozen food. So that temperature will maintain itself, whatever temperature it is, because it's in a vacuum. And if it's frozen in a sterile environment, which vacuum is, it'll last forever. And I'm making this out of gold. This is going to be my final rockets. So all the other rockets that I've constructed to this point have all been temporary. So for the very first rocket with the smaller module to the one that'll store oil and the one that creates the data banks, this is the final one. And the main cargo for this is really the dupes themselves, to have a small barracks and a small mess hall, high level of decoration. Basically, whoever is going to be spending a significant amount of time in here will have high morale value with it. Making that out of mesh just in case they're sick. It's not going to affect that naphtha liquid to the right. I certainly do not want polluted water to go inside the food storage area, because that would ruin everything there. But I will have a latrine, so most of the time they should be using that. But if it ever did run out of water and they got sick, it would land on the actual bottom floor and not go into the food storage area. So that's the critical piece there. I'm going to put in a carbon skimmer so that it automatically removes carbon dioxide when dupes are in here. And I'll have an oxidizer. I will need to make sure that I've got enough algae whenever they do a longer mission in space for their oxygen needs. Looking back in the inverted world, they've fixed the pipe here. So how about we just build that insulated ceramic tile to allow the steam turbine to be able to operate again. And that's going to, now that this is actually set to proper value, and I've got the pipe in going in the right direction, so that I can control temperatures from here only going into that. If we make this minus, I'll put -3 and we'll see how we get with that. So -3 temperatures could be going into that, meaning that you get another -15 from that, and we could get very cold liquid. Right now it's about 2 degrees. It will start to get cooler as time goes on. Currently nighttime, so we might not have the power necessary, but when daylight is back, that should be fine. The other thing that I can now do, so now that I'll eventually be getting negative temperatures from that brine line, it's going to be transporting that down here to this point in a vacuum. But from this point on, it will no longer be a vacuum, so I'll actually want to insulate it. I definitely don't want the water that's in this location to ever actually freeze. So I'm going to be careful about this. I'm going to make ceramic insulated pipes around, well, it's close, but for the rest of the trip, I'm going to just use igneous rock, which is a decent insulator. Certainly not as good as ceramic, but it should do the job. I'll keep an eye on this to see how it goes as time goes on. So on this side of it, however, I don't care, because there's in a vacuum area, that cold brine will just maintain its temperature and not interact with anything else. And the idea is, now that I've got water in here, I need a brine line that goes through all this area to freeze the water, but not just freeze water, but also some of the natural tiles where I can plant sleet wheat. That sleet wheat needs to actually be in a cold zone, so it's also about cooling the other tiles as well, where I'll eventually be planting sleet wheat. What I'm doing now is lowering the solar panels. I'm actually going to have glass tiles built above the ladder, so that the actual dupes, when they go up and down the ladder, they'll be able to do so in a bit of light, which is nice. But on top of that, the main reason really is bringing these down is to keep them away from the Radbolt engines, so they won't take the damage from that. And I'm going to notice that this pole and ladder is in the way, so I'm going to destroy this. so I can get my solar panel built over where it currently exists. And the neat thing about solar panels is it actually acts as tiles itself. The bottom one is. So currently I've got 2 levels of tiles. You can actually use it to prevent gas from escaping if you ever have that needs, or you don't have quite enough need for or space for both tiles and the solar panel. Anyway, that's just random note about solar panel. Let's see if I still need to destroy some ladders before I can get that second one in there. So that's going to allow me to connect that and keep that safe while my Radbolt engines take off. Okay, I'm being a bit reckless of how I'm doing this. I've got an area where dupes can wear both Atmo suits and just walk normally in the same spot. Not cool, but it's temporary. I'm going to very quickly as possible dig this area out. I'm going to put the solar panels on this zone. That's going to act as actual tiling, such that it will prevent from gases from escaping. And then I will, once that's the case, then all the dupes that are walking up in space that don't have Atmo suits will eventually go back into the base to try to breathe. And then it will create one zone for Atmo suits only once again, which is not the case. You can see some dupes holding their breath on top of the solar panels. Probably what I should have done is built some tiles underneath that before I constructed this, because actually some of that hydrogen checking and filtering is actually not needed anymore. Whatever. There it is, some solar panels being lowered. This is the inside of one of the Radbolt engine rockets, or the safe air module. I'm going to have doors here, so this is going to separate the downstairs from the upstairs. The left side is going to be a mess hall. The middle one will be a barracks. I'm going to make one of the tiles there around gold just to maximize amount of decoration, but I'm going to make a mesh hall at the top just to allow some a little bit more airflow through, and allow the latrine. That won't be a washroom, but at least have a latrine over there, and some ladders because they won't be able to access the very top to construct. I'm not going to show every single rocket that I build because it's pretty much this. This is going to be the identical rocket I create for all. I'll eventually have 4 of these for the 4 different launch pads going forward. So this is what it looks like. One of the issues that I'm having is I have a lot of worn Atmo suits, and I'm a bit surprised. I suspected initially that I need to create more copper. Come to find out, it's not a shortage of copper that's the issue. It's the fiber reeds, or reed fiber. But that's because I discovered this. I've sent way too many over in this world, so there's just an abundance here that I can just simply teleport back. I thought they went to the Desolens for some reason in one of the bins, and then I forgot. No, it was when I had teleported a few. One of the dupe actually sent way too many. It didn't specify the correct number of weight. But anyway, this dupe is picking up the excess, sending it back to the homeworld so that they can have access to them. So I've got 2 bins of fossils, which is really good. What I'm going to do now is get both the dupes to go in here. So I'm going to have an unmanned base over at this spot. I'm going to send that back to the homeworld so I can get fossils sent there. And the 2 dupes can help build some of the stuff, including the nuclear power plant, in the homeworld. The main thing is I'm going to have access to the fossil that I can convert to lime, which eventually will make steel, which I'm still in need of to finish that nuclear power plant. So this is the inverted world. Things are looking really good here. I've got a line, and I'm finally connecting this cold brine line to go into the base itself. So it will not only just be keeping the tops or the 2 different steam turbine sections cool, but it will actually be freezing the base itself at the bottom so that I can grow some sleet wheat. Long term, it'll also be continuing to keep that area cool because I'm going to put in some automation where the sleet wheat is growing, which means a little bit of heat is going to be generated in that area. And over the long term, if I didn't continually have this brine line cool where I plan to put wild slate wheat, it would actually eventually warm up to the point that the plants don't grow anymore. So this is not just a short-term thing of freezing the ice and getting it cool enough, but it actually needs to maintain that temperature long term so that I can get off the need of having to farm. There are two strategies. I could either have a farm and worry about production of dirt, which is quite possible. I can do that by pips or ethanol. But most likely I'd probably choose the wild trees and have ethanol and have that for dirt. And then, of course, the phosphorus would be coming from the Draco critters. But this is a long-term base, and anytime I have a long-term plan, I rely on wild plants. So currently I've got a farm for pepper bread, but this is going to be more of a long-term type thing. And you can see I finally have some brine visiting both sides. This is granite pipes. I don't need radiant pipes. It may take a little bit longer to cool things down, but it eventually gets the job done. And I just don't need the intense amount of radiant pipes. It will still freeze ice. It'll be more than enough to actually maintain its temperature. And you can see wherever I had some holes within the different tiles above, where I essentially want to have three sleet wheat, 3 tiles, 3 sleet wheat. I've got water filled in. That's the bit that's going to turn to ice. Top ones don't have a top to them. Everyone else will. That's just because I don't have the room for it at the very top. So here is the final touches of the inside of my Radbolt engine rocket. As I mentioned, this will be one of the final rockets. So now that this exists, this will probably never be destroyed. And it'll be my rocket that I use from this point on, just destroying those temporary ladders, opening the doors. No point of having them closed. And just need to build a set. So I'm going to actually set this up for doodoobs. So I'll have two beds or stacked up with the ladder and 2 mess tables for them to eat. A single, they can share the latrine, so that will exist. Hasn't been populated or pushed, have any oxygen or water pushed in, or food. So or algae. I also need to think about algae as well. So I don't even think this is necessary. This is kind of going that extra mile of just putting a tiny bit of extra decoration, because I don't have any use for the space anyways. The other bit is power. So I do need the carbon skimmer and oxygen diffuser to have power. That I will connect with a small little wire that visits all those 2 machineries and the battery. And once that wire is created, I'll create the manual generator, which will be on the bottom left. The only thing I don't have is a spot for a bin. So what I'll probably do is destroy one of the mess tables when I have a need for that. Or the carbon dioxide skimmer even would be a possibility of just good use to destroy that. The main thing I want to bring into this world, or into this rocket, is algae. Unless, of course, I'm on some of my specialized missions. Oh my goodness. Engineer made a mess, but it's not inside the rocket since they're wearing a suit. Gross. All right. Okay, so I've got my 4 different rocket platforms, 2 temporary ones that are above. Once those rockets go up, I'm just going to load those in with the oxygen and water that they're missing. So both these rockets look identical, or almost identical anyways. They have their food storage, oxygen pipes, water pipes, mess table, all of that. The only difference is potentially the outside of the rocket as to what it's going to be containing. This one here, the oxygen output is slightly different. That's the only difference that I can see between the 2 different rockets. But they're got 2 different rooms to up morale, high decoration because of the gold latrines, so they won't be as sick as they could be otherwise. That does a better job of handling germs than other toilets. And infinite foods, well, I shouldn't say infinite food storage, but the food storage that is there will. I noticed my dupes spending a lot of time transporting small amounts of fossil from the rocket down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have a bin to store fossils and have an auto sweeper to put in that, just to help speed up this process. here. And what I'll do is I'll put in a high priority for that bin to store fossil, and then go back into the actual production phase of that, just so that I can reduce the amount of trips dupes are taking from the rocket down into this bin, just to speed things up considerably. All right, actually, well, I thought that bin was going to be created. All right, oh, there it is. Now I've got a water pipe that's going to be putting in input of these two rockets. The brine geyser is no longer active and brine is gone. There's a little bit of water, polluted water on top of it, so taking advantage of the fact this is now empty, I might as well clean it up to avoid the need for filtering, as long as I can maintain no more polluted water or water going into it in the future. This is the rocket that's creating some databanks, just changing it to Radbolt Engines, because I'm going to we'll eventually have 4 rockets with Radbolt only engine anyway, and might as well not waste the tons of Radbolts. It's eventually going to be coming out of this system on the left. I think it is just about time to get these protective suits that give more radiation protections becoming active. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate the 2 different zones that the dupes can go into. The right is going to be for Atmo suits, and the left is going to be for their more heavy-duty lead protective suits, giving them a little bit more radiation protection, especially when the research reactor becomes active and outputs a intense amount of radiation. So that will, once those tiles are created, they'll create walls to prevent dupes from traveling, and I'll destroy this tile there to let them go through. Over here on the inverted world, I've started the cooling process, and I decided I'm going to take advantage of this area up here, which I kind of ignored. I can get a little bit of 6 or maybe even a dozen pieces of slate wheat up there. In this slate wheat zone, I'm going to be making lots of changes. And one thing I don't want to do is destroy the pipe and have salt water go everywhere. So I actually have this shut-off system that every now and then when I want to make a change, I can shut it off, let it drain out, and what I'll do is finish up my construction, and then at the end I'll change it. The other thing, or turn it back on. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm actually changing the direction. Right now it goes from the bottom up. I want it to go from the top down. In other words, I want to freeze the little bit of water that's on the top first before we go down. The reason for that is ultimately I'm going to be using pips to plant wild slate wheat, and you want to go from the top down and from the right to the left, just to maximize the number of wild plants that pip will put down. So that's why I'm doing that. So I want to be able to freeze the ice at the top, be able to be in a position to start planting those with pips, while my dupes are digging down the bottom, filling that with water and waiting for that to turn to ice. Now up here, I'm just doing the same thing that I've done on the bottom area below this, which is just making 3 tiles that are going to be frozen with ice if I don't have natural tiles. Fortunately, the second layer here, I don't need to have ice created, but up the very top I do. So the idea is that's going to contain 3 slate wheat on 1 pocket, and then I need space of 3, and then I can put another 3 on the left. The other thing that I could have done is done sort of 1 plant, 1 space, 1 plant, 1 space, type of thing. But I prefer this because I can put an automation sweeper in between, and it will reach all 6 of them. So that's why I'm doing that style. Now the other bit is I just got to, before I re-enable the saltwater line, which is doing some freezing, I'm just going to destroy some pipes there. Notice I've got insulation on the right side. That's not the area that I'm trying to freeze. It's only the spot that is on the other side of those insulation tiles where the ice is that I want the freezing. Though I don't really care if it gets cold there. It's just I'm just trying to avoid the waste of cooling from cooling that area, because I just want to concentrate on this spot here where the slate wheat's going to be. And I don't have a pipe that goes around this. So what I'm going to actually need to do is fill this with water first. And I might just reuse the saltwater line for that. And I'll just keep that saltwater line disabled until both those tiles exist, and actually construct or just temporarily use this pipe here to get up some water into that zone, fill it, and then once there's enough water there, I can enable the saltwater line for some freezing. So back here on the homeworld, and just having a look here, I just have this brine line disabled via that spot there. I'm also just taking a note that I'm going to need to destroy 2 pieces of ladder, because this is actually creating a bridge. The Atmo suits and the protective suits can both access. I don't want that. So destroying 2 ladders there so that the protective suits are used if the dupes need to go directly underneath the nuclear power system area that I've set up. And the Atmo suits won't be able to go there because I've destroyed those 2 ladders. With that being the case, I can now destroy that tile. And now we actually can see when my dupes going in and out of that zone. So that's perfect. So if I want to have my dupes go inside what I'm calling the nuclear power plant setup, they can do that. And they can do that with protective suits. And they can do that without steam being taken out. So now what I'm doing is I need to actually load this with enriched uranium. I don't have a conveyor loader. One thing I don't want to do, I could have the dupes manually put on the suits and actually go put it inside the machinery itself, the research reactor that is. But instead I want to have, I can actually destroy this setup. This is the setup that was feeding the old system a small amount of enriched uranium a day. Now I don't care. I can actually throw all the enriched uranium I can at all those steam turbines, and expecting that to be able to keep it cool and as well get a lot of power out of that system, as well as Radbolts. So just destroying this old setup here. So here it is, the nuclear power station. I'm just at my last piece of steel that's needed. Someone just mentioned I didn't need to actually make the research reactor itself out of steel, so that would save me a little bit, but I think I'll just leave that since I've got enough steel at this point in time. The other thing is just doing some checks. If I've got all the automation, I see a switch here that's missing. Most likely not going to use all the Radbolt generators. Well, definitely not going to be using them all right away. But the other piece that I want to throw into this, and I'm hoping this isn't actually needed, but this is just there for safety reasons. It's basically going to be a temperature line that goes to the research reactor itself and says if the temperature gets above a certain point, that I'm concerned about, stop operating. No, it doesn't. It's not that it would stop operating, but it will stop being supplied with input, both by dupes and the auto sweeper that's left to it. So what that is going to give is just a bit of a safety mechanism. The other thing, I'm going to put it through an AND gate with a manual switch so I can override it if need be. For whatever reason, I just want to shut the system off, I can do that. Again, I'll have to wait for the material that's in there to burn out. So I'm not expecting that to be needed. This might be over-engineering or an extra bit of safety, but why not? Just making all these little bit of components out of steel as well. And I'll need a automation bridge across that. So yeah, that's what that bit is. But I suspect, and I've done this with testing, I've never done this in an actual playthrough. I've only done this in the sort of debug mode of the game where you can build things automatically. And that's the number of steam turbines I have should actually keep this thing cool. That's my expectation. But just as abundance of caution, let's see, what 275, something around there. The only issue I have is actually the auto sweeper. If I didn't have that in there, that is going to, let's see, I think it's actually 275, isn't it? Where this would, overheat temperature would be 275. So I probably don't want to have that temperature set as that, but I'm expecting never to get up to 200 anyways. So what I'm going to say is this can operate if it is below, do I want 200 or let's go 225. So if it goes above that, it will shut the input off to it. But I'm going to turn this machine off for the time being. I'm starting to think about getting another dupe here. So if I look at this blueprint, I'm almost never going to say no to a wart seed. It's just one of those things that you can't get anywhere else because those plants don't produce seeds of themselves. Just attacking some excess pips that finally have grown back again. Over here, this is the conveyor loader that's going to provide enriched uranium inside the research reactor. Now, I have to be careful about an infinite loop that could happen here because they could load this in there that'll dump it into the machine. Because they have access to go there, they might put on the protective suits and bring it out. So but I have a door to prevent them from doing that. So I'm going to be careful about when I actually turn this on. Over here, I've got now 3 rockets with Radbolt engines. I want to make a 4th one, and that will be my 4th and final one. This is inside one of my rockets. It looks like it's just about complete. The only thing it needs is a manual generator, as well as to be loaded with materials such as food and algae. Now the rocket over here, pretty much the same thing. Just needs a manual generator, and that manual generator, all it really does is provide power. Actually, we'll need a battery as well. So actually, make sure the battery gets in there first before the manual generator. Otherwise, one of the dupes is going to be wasting their time running on that. But yeah, just algae, food, and what else? Oh my God, what am I trying to say? Whatever other material you want to travel with, such as if you're going to be landing somewhere and want to build solar panels, then I'll want to also make sure there's glass on that. But generally, food and algae is the 2 minimum things, at least for a longer based mission. So this here, I'm not actually on a mission, just sending this rocket up and parking it down next to the rocket that's on the left. So I can actually destroy the platforms that's on, because the 4 platforms in the bottom, that's the only ones I actually want to have. So once that ladder is destroyed, actually I don't even think I have to wait for it. I can then get the dupe that just flew up, and they just went 1 tile away from the base. They can't build that manual generator because they don't have the material. That's okay. But yeah, I'm going to get them to go back down, but I'm going to I didn't take note of the number. 371. I want specifically go to 371. Usually you don't care, but in this is one of those cases I actually specifically want it to go to that one. I actually want that one destroyed. I can now crew this rocket, and Astronaut is going to be the dupe I pick on when I just want to do some sort of movement of rockets like this. So they can go from this rocket to that one. They're going to do pretty much the same thing. I'll just get them to fly up 1 tile away from this asteroid. The dupes on land here can destroy these 2 platforms. And then I'll be able to just destroy that ladder there. That way I shouldn't be in a situation of not being able to get my rockets to launch because there's stuff in the way. Also destroy some of these random pipes that are laying around. Those were specifically to load water and oxygen into the Radbolt engines when they're higher up. But this is the new position. I left 20 tiles above this, so I get 19 tiles for the rocket itself. So this rocket is not limited by the fact of where those platforms are. But I also have a ladder at the very top. So if my dupes need to cross it, they don't need to cross the bottom area. And the reason I don't want them to do that is because lots of Radbolts are going to be flying through that zone. It's going to be quite dangerous. I do not want, I'll actually have to destroy some of the ladders at the bottom, but I'll wait until this system is fully created. Just take note that one of the pipes there is taking a bit of damage due to heat, so I'll also have to address this when this is all finally done. But 682, that's the rocket. That's the wrong one there. If I go to the rocket that's up in space, I want this to go specifically to, yeah, this is it. Oh, I need to actually tell it to, okay, first of all, I need to tell it to go to the home world. That's right. And now I can say 682, boom. That will send this rocket down there. Now I've got 3 rockets that are lined up perfectly for the Radbolts that are going to be firing out when I enable the research reactor. And see a little bit of heat The solar panels are well clear of that, so that is fine. Can see the ladder's taking a bit of heat. I made that out of igneous rock, so expecting that to be okay. But I'm going to have some insulated pipes that input oxygen and water just to hopefully minimize or hopefully stop heat from damaging those. But we'll see how that goes when I get to that point. So there's 3 rockets anyways for Radbolt Engines. It's been a while since I looked at the inverted world here. It looks like these 2 spots here, this is going to be the very top spots where sleet wheat is going to go. So this is where I'm trying to create some ice. I don't have any pipes that go through this zone. I'm just removing some of this material because when that ice freezes, I will never be able to access any stuff that's in there. A little bit of copper and granite and other things. But anyway, we'll do that. We'll do some mopping up. And actually, water is spilled out down there. That's fine. So we'll get all that mopped up, and then I will endeavor to create this piping system. Actually, so what I want to do now is drain the water that is in this spot, because I want that to be the saltwater line that's going to do cooling. So I can't do that if I've got water already in the line. So I want to make sure I take all the water out. A little bit of bisylite. That would have been annoying. So make sure I dig those out. Actually, that's a spot where I'll want to put water. So let's do this. Let's drain the water into these 2 locations here. So I get the pipes at the top empty of water, and I can start running the cold salt water through it to eventually turn those top tiles to ice. And then I can get a pip up there with some sleet wheat seeds, and we can start wild sleet wheat plants, which will be good. I think this is where I will end it for this episode, just putting in a Radbolt reflector. So once these rockets are charged with Radbolts, I'm then going to have a reflector send Radbolts down, and that will go to the research station. It'll also go to a future diamond press. And that will do for this episode. In this episode, I did more work on the research reactor, or the nuclear power plant station. That is currently not online yet, but we're getting very close. Possibly in the next episode, I'll turn that on. The other thing is I lined up some of the Radbolt engines such that the Radbolts that are going to be coming out of that will go into those rockets and not be wasted. So, like, subscribe, and see you in the next video.